Looking at these factory lines, you are seeing a domestic powerhouse. Bangladesh produces roughly 98% of its own medicine. But to keep these lines moving, the industry relies heavily on importing the raw materials, the active pharmaceutical ingredients, or APIs. For a foreign supplier sitting on a massive catalog of 300 APIs, that reliance looks like an easy win. The standard playbook is simple. Email that entire 300 product list to 50 local companies and wait for the orders to roll in. Then comes the waiting. Suppliers send follow-up emails. They slash their prices. They follow up again. Eventually, the silence forces them to pack up without securing any meaningful contracts. They usually walk away concluding that Bangladesh is a difficult market to enter. But the geography was never the issue. Offering everything to everyone was the actual problem. Let's test this with a hypothetical product. We'll call it API-A. This map represents a highly popular molecule, already marketed by over 40 different local companies, driving a massive volume of formulations. The math seems straightforward. 40 active local manufacturers should equal 40 open doors for a new supplier to step in and make a sale. But a market this mature is already locked down. Those 40 companies are actively buying from established suppliers. That heavy competition drives down prices, turning buyers hyper-price sensitive and effectively shutting out new entrants. When you measure a market strictly by top-line volume, you fall into a trap. High demand in an established space usually means a closed, impenetrable supply chain. Now compare that to API-B. This is a much more complex molecule, and right now only 5 to 7 local companies have the technical capability to manufacture it. On paper, the downsides are obvious. The overall production volume is much smaller, and your pool of qualified buyers shrinks to single digits. But look closer at the specific conditions. This therapeutic segment is actively expanding. More importantly, those few manufacturers have no local sources for this material. They're entirely dependent on imports. A small market with a massive supply gap offers a clear entry point. A massive market with no gap offers none. This exposes an underlying rule of the pharmaceutical trade. Formulation competition and API supply competition are two completely separate ecosystems. If you walk into a pharmacy, you might see 25 different brands of the exact same drug crammed onto the shelves, fighting for consumer attention. But the consumer shelf is the wrong place to look. We have to trace the supply lines backward from the pharmacy to the raw material. Mapping it out, all 25 competing consumer brands quietly source active ingredients from just 3 global suppliers. What appears as an overcrowded retail war zone is actually a tightly controlled supply oligopoly. And right next to them is a void waiting to be filled. Counting finished brands to gauge opportunity creates a dangerous illusion. Real business is found by identifying the invisible bottlenecks feeding those brands. To find those bottlenecks, you have to throw out market size as your primary metric. Finding a viable entry point requires a much more specific set of variables. This equation lays out the actual metrics for pharmaceutical market entry. It is demand, multiplied by import dependency, customer fit, and supply gap. Look at the sheer volume moving through these ports. You cannot approach this by asking who might buy your product. You have to analyze where your portfolio perfectly intersects with the exact dependencies of local manufacturers. Success here requires ruthless, analytical filtering. A shotgun sales approach will miss the target entirely. Let's run that bloated 300 product catalog through this exact filter. We push the list through layers of therapeutic categories, local dependencies, and actual supply gaps. Stripping away the noise eliminates the bulk of the list, leaving only 20 products worth investigating. We push through the final entry probability filters. Out of 300 initial molecules, you are left with just 3 to 5 products capable of generating real business. Targeting 3 high-value gaps with surgical precision yields contracts. Blasting 300 generic products to 50 companies yields silence. In the global pharma trade, the most popular molecule is rarely your best option. The opportunity everyone else overlooks is almost always more valuable than the product everyone is already trying to sell.